Do you enjoy classic fantasy, but, wish it would get to the point quicker? Well, this book's probably for you. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Blood of the Spear by Mark Timmony, which is book 1 in the Eye of Eternity series. And this is one I'd been meaning to get to for quite some time. I had an ebook of this for quite a while, and then I was chatting with the author, Mark Timmony, in Discord just about a bunch of other stuff, and he offered to send me a physical copy, which I was super happy with because I'd seen Andrew's copy, and it's beautiful. Really, really pretty book. I did do a little short looking at this, so you can check it out if you want to see a little bit more. But this is a super cool book. Now, I said in my wrap-up that I was going to make sure to show the map, because I always forget to show maps in videos, even though I love maps. So it does have a very cool map. Really, really big world where we've got, essentially two kind of like somewhat connected almost continents that are different here. So really, really big world setup, which definitely comes in. It's just I have so much to talk about with this one, so let's just jump into it. So Blood of the Spear opens up with doing one of the premises where it's kind of like our Chosen One premise with a spin on it though, whereas we know that there's somebody who is supposed to become the next Imperios, which is like a prophesized figure that's going to return, who was the leader of the summoners, who were these very powerful magic users who could summon, I think, demons or other things, and that is kind of set up. And so we have two brothers, Kyle and Darian, who are, either one could potentially be who this person is. And we start out looking at them and their situation, and then we have other characters that are brought into the fold as well. We start with Kyle, who is trying to become a demon hunter, and he is going through a trial and is kind of like betrayed by the other person who is going through it, and so ends up not knowing what he's going to be doing. Darian, who is wanting to become a Seralis, which I'm probably going to mispronounce some of these words for the record too, but which is an order of magic users as well. And even with there too, there's a couple of the other characters, Meg, who has trained with the same person Darian did, who is a witch, which is kind of a different kind of magic use as well. And then you have Sivani, who is also involved in the core group, who has some powers revealed as well. And so we have this group of people, and it's set up to be kind of the good versus evil. But the interesting thing that this book does is it sets up, and there's so much inspiration from a lot of classic fantasy style. There's a ton of Wheel of Time inspiration here that's pretty clear. Also a lot of Janie Wirt's inspiration from like Wars of Light and Shadow and some of her stuff as well. So there's a lot of that's definitely visible, but it's used in a different way, and it's just used to explore this kind of just massive, complex world. And now the thing is, I was expecting this to be a very slow burn type of book, and it really wasn't. The pacing was much quicker than I was expecting. Now, of course, I'm a guy that I'm like, I could have been slower, and I would have been fine with that, expand more, keep digging into that world. I love my slow burn, but this actually was a much quicker read than it really looks, I would say. The pacing is pretty quick, and while still having the quicker pacing, we're building out such a crazy amount of things here. And I know Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads had made a comment that this book is kind of like if Steven Erikson wrote The Eye of the World. And I can see why he said that, because although the writing style is pretty different from Erikson, it's kind of setting up similar to Malazan, where it's just there's so much going on. We've got lots of different places that are mentioned. There's different cultures. There's all kinds of different magic users. We have the Seralis, which are in order. And then there's the Shulei, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but another group who have been around and have different goals and different ways that they use magic. There are people who practice the witching ways who do things differently as well. And so there's so much here. We have set up too that there are demons that can kind of like slip into the world, and there in the past were people who were able to summon them. We've got elder gods. We have like demigod kind of people who are basically looked at as gods among humanity because they're immortal. We have so much going on here and being set up, but it is managing to do it while also being pretty fast paced. So this would be the kind of book where I feel like it's, do you enjoy classic fantasy but wish it would get to the point quicker? Well, this book's probably for you because of the fact that it has so much, so many elements of what I expect in either classic or kind of like classic style fantasy, which is just we're really digging in and adding all of these kinds of things, and yet it's doing it in a quicker pace and an easier to read kind of format. So I think this would be a really great bridge book or a series, because I know it's obviously going to be a series. If you're interested in trying some of those really big complex series, but you want to kind of ease in and try doing it something a little bit differently, I feel like this would be a really great book for that, because it does a great job with setting up all of those complex things, but also still moving quickly and not taking forever to do it. Now, honestly, and it's funny because I think that's going to be a positive thing for most readers. One of my very few negatives with this book, though, was all of the characters kind of had like a thing. They had a specific thing that's important. And we start to, there's still a lot of questions to be answered. It's not like we find everything out about all these characters in one book, but they're all kind of set up with, like, this person has a mysterious past, and it's because of this, and like this person also has something going on here, and like these people, we can kind of see what's being set up. Now, I think that's done very intentionally, because once again, it's written in a lot faster. This is one of those books where some authors probably could have taken 2 to 3 books to get this much plot in and just really slowing it down, which I tend to like those kinds of books. So like, once again, I wouldn't be complaining, but I think this is specifically trying to accomplish that, but in a much shorter amount of page count and time. And I think it does that very well. So it's setting those things up, and it's the way it's done. I'm like, I feel like I'd rather find out a little bit later, but it's establishing it at the front, and then I'm sure we're going to look into that a lot more later. And there's also the things that are set up do not always go at all like the way you think they're going to, just because we know about this character. So some things we only just get little hints of what's to come. Other things, it's not really like a misdirect, but it's just we don't always know if everything's going to turn out the exact way. And so it manages to do that as well. And I mentioned there's some very clear inspiration from series like Wheel of Time and Words of Light and Shadow. And I think, too, is being a huge Wheel of Time fan, like I definitely notice those things. And I did notice some, even though I'm not very far into Words of Light and Shadow, just some things that from reading some of Janie Wirth's other stuff, too, that she likes to do in her stories. And some of those elements are present here, but it, to me at least, really at no point felt like this is like a carbon copy of any of those things. It's just one of those books where you can see that inspiration, and it's being used in a different way. And Mark Timmony really is setting up so many different things here and just setting up a really, really rich world. And I am really interested to continue in this series and get further in, because it's so rich and complex, but in a much easier way to read. So it's like, I joke, some authors could have taken 2 to 3 books to do this much. I'm like, yeah, Jordan did some of the really slow books, and sometimes you don't really find out about what people's thing is until later, either in that. And like with Erickson, he also sets up a crazy amount of stuff, but I feel like the bar to entry is a lot higher with Erickson as well, which, some people don't have an issue with that either. And like, overall, I like when I read Moines, and I'm like, I appreciate this, but I didn't have the best time reading it. And so this was a much quicker, easier to get into kind of writing style. And I think that serves the format of the story and just the type of story really well, because usually there's kind of a disconnect between the two. You'll get a lot of modern fantasy that's written, it's a lot faster pace, and I'm not at all saying that like modern fantasy doesn't do world building or doesn't do really complex stories. That's not true, and that's not what I'm saying. But that kind of just it manages. Blood of the Spear. Eye of Eternity. Now I'm combining it. Sorry, Mark. But this book manages to, like I said, really be kind of the middle ground. We're not like spending a ton of time in page count in books, slowly building out the world, and we're also not just throwing everything at you and moving really fast. It's kind of like a nice bridge. I just feel like with a lot of books, it's, you know, you can only take so much time to build out your world, and so people will kind of throw it in bits and pieces, but moving along with other things as well. This is done in a creative way because we're using younger characters leaving home for the first time, so they don't know a lot about the world, and that's one of those things that's one of the reasons that works so well, just because they can learn about the world as you go along. Similar to like what happened in Wheel of Time, they're learning about the world, and so you learn about it as they learn about it. So you learn more about it that way, but it's also just that as we go along, there's so many different little bits and pieces and different players we see and different parts going on, and you never quite know what's going on. So it's also not at all like the just analog good versus evil. There's a lot here. There are other interested parties. Everybody's got their own motivations, and even the people who seem to be on the same side as our characters may or may not be. And it's just there's a lot more going on. The way the book ends too sets up what I think is going to be really interesting for the second book. But it's just things very much. Some things you're like, okay, that I knew that was going to happen. Other things like, okay, no, this happened very differently. So it does a really great job just bringing you through it. And like I said, I got through this pretty quickly. And it's a decently long book, but the readability and the pacing just make it really easy to get through. And of course, I still like my really slow books, but it was just so interesting reading a book that feels like it should be a slow burn epic fantasy book, but it isn't. It's very much complex epic fantasy, but it's done in just with a lower bar to entry. So like I said, if you're somebody who has not done a lot of the like really big long series, and it's just those are kind of daunting to you, maybe try this book because it's an ongoing series, but it's also the way it's written I think will maybe work for some people who just don't like the slower pacing and want something that moves a little quicker while still kind of getting that. And so I really think it'd be a good opportunity to do something like that with this book. We do have a really interesting set of characters and different people and nations, and I'm just so excited too because you don't get a ton in a lot of books anymore where we're really exploring all of the map either, is the thing. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to specifically show the map, is because a lot of times we're kind of focused on one location, and sometimes we'll move about more, and there definitely are books that do, but this is definitely one of those books. It's got a very large map, and I was like, as I was going through the story, I'm like sitting there here, and then I'm like following along, and even in this first book, like we have done a very small amount of the map here. There's still so much more map here, and that always excites me. I like the books with the really big maps. And I like the fact that we're getting references to these other places too. And it's not just like the map is there for show. I'm pretty sure we're going to see quite a lot more of these places, learn more about these peoples. And there's all kinds of different, like I said, all kinds of different magic users, interesting plants, flora, fauna. We've got humans and other races as well, including really interesting ones. That are like some that are somewhat humanoid, some aren't, other creatures, demons. There's just so much going on here, and it's, like I said, a very complex and intricate plot, but just delivered in an easier format, which I think is just kind of refreshing. It basically there. So it's definitely a book that I enjoyed. I'm definitely going to be waiting and very excited for the second book here. There is a Novella 2 Starbinder, which I'm planning on reading probably very soon, but I have not yet, which I think is like a prequel, which there's a link to it if you read this book. That you can get it as well, and so I'm excited to do that. But yeah, this was just a really enjoyable book. And it's definitely my kind of story, and it's just paced faster than I was expecting, which was a really nice surprise. And this continued my streak. The end of November was just really, really good reads. I was having a good time with everything, which was pretty awesome. So I'm excited to continue on and keep reading everything, because I've been having a good time reading everything lately. So those are really my thoughts on The Blood of the Spear by Mark Timmony, first book in the Eye of Eternity. Definitely check this one out. It's a really good read. And I'm like I said, I'm really excited for more. This one and Deathless Beast are just two self-pub ones I read recently. Just really enjoyed. I can't wait to read more of them. So anyway, though, but we could get back to the main thing. So make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Do It Discord if you want to chat books. Whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all, it is a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.